What happens when the cheering stops and the competitive stage fades? Well, in this episode of The Power of After Show, we dive into the powerful and often challenging transition many high performers and former athletes face when their ability to compete at peak levels change. And we'll explore with our guest today, Christy Nichol, the toil and the toll of burnout and what burnout recovery looks like, and how to implement much needed stress reset and the identity shift that comes when performance is no longer the primary driver. And whether you're a retired athlete or a high achiever facing a career transition, or you're just simply navigating life after intense seasons of pushing your limits and your work. Well, this show offers insight, encouragement, and a path forward. So stay tuned. Power of After is for you at mid-career, halftime of life, helping you maximize your skills, resources, and experience. We have courses, products, and help to make this stage of your life your best and most purposeful ever. Don't miss a single article, free download, or podcast. Get all the latest at goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Well, I'm so excited to have Christy with us today. This is I wonder, you have such an important topic, and on a competing athlete, and also dealing with the mindsets and really the change and the stress that can happen. And I felt like the topic that you came in with was important, like the next play, life after competition. That's a big deal. Because there's some mindsets. I'm married to a former pro athlete, and it's hard. The body gets older, life changes. So, Chrissy, I like giving my guests usually telling a little bit about themselves. I did a brief introduction, but I didn't talk about your full background. So why don't you give people our audience a little bit of your background?
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to. And so, there's the one thing I would sort of start with. What I'm up to now is, I say seasoned business owners, CEOs, high performing professionals, former athletes call me when they are feeling burnt out. They want to sleep better, feel more relaxed, have more joy without needing to burn it all down or walk away, go on stress leave because of what they're experiencing. Right? And I can relate to that high performing professional as someone who came into this lifetime and spent my younger years as a competitive gymnast. So I understand that drive to succeed, to push, to perform. And then the transition that comes when that thing ends, and then you're moving into this next phase of, okay, what's next? So for me, that happened fairly early on as back in the day, competitive gymnasts, we were done by the time we were 17, 18, and that transition needed to happen. But then I see it a lot in mid-career, midlife professionals, that same transition needing to happen.
And it's the same principle. It doesn't matter really what total level you are at, although the higher level you get, the harder it is, because some people just have a hard time making any sort of switch mindset wise. It's like, what else is going to fill that sort of high and that sort of void? And what was your main area as a professional gymnast?
Yeah. So in terms of competing, or the apparatus, I suppose, that I loved the most, I was a power athlete. So the floor and the vault were sort of my areas of expertise within the four apparati. And interestingly enough, even though despite that being kind of my sort of zone of genius as a gymnast, it was also my biggest fear as a gymnast.
Oh, that's
Right?
something. Yes.
That is something. There you are, like running at the speed of light as fast as you can to jump on this beat board and go over this immovable object.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of learning how to overcome fear in my career as a gymnast, because the thing that I was really good at was also the thing I was most afraid of.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now that is, I mean, that's a life principle for many
Yes.
of us of just, okay, I want to succeed, but I'm a little afraid what's going to happen along the way? What if I fail? But failure over and over is the path to success. You will learn from that. So that is really, really important. And how, um, that's an interesting thought that was, what was you most afraid of? Like you were gonna fall, you were gonna like just mess up, or you weren't gonna get the ratings that you wanted?
Yeah. I think so for me in particular, I think it was a fear of hurting myself.
Ah,
I think that's
okay.
really if I think underneath it all. And,
Mhm.
sometimes all the coach had to do is step in close enough that if they could put their hands there if I needed it,
Uh-huh.
and it just the presence was enough to then fly down that runway and go over this immovable object at the speed of light.
Ah,
Um, and so I think there was underneath a fear of hurting myself ultimately, or this fear of not I knew I could do it, but sometimes the belief wasn't always there, depending on some days it was. And we see this,
yes.
right? And other days it's like, where did that belief go? Why don't I believe I can do this?
Ag
Yeah.
Again, that is such a life principle. That's exactly what entrepreneurs wake up with every day. Going,
Yes.
"What's gonna happen today?" You know? "Is my technology gonna work? Am I gonna forget everything I'm on a stage? Am I gonna like, what's gonna happen?" Like, financial markets, maybe,
Why
there's
was this easier last week and not this week?
yes, yes. What a great principle. Yes, yes. But that's a very, very important point to say that you had to overcome some of that fear. And I think that's really important in that competitive field and how that has helped you build. Now, I am one when you talk about a professional gymnast, I've never been able to really touch my toes. Okay. So I am totally not in that field. But I have a son who's a professional athlete and a daughter-in-law who was a professional athlete, blew her knees out. So, but yeah, so we've talked about mindsets before. I've talked to her. I had her come on because it is hard. She's had friends that has not been able to reinvent their life. So you have, and so that's important. And so we will get into that. We will keep getting into that. And what is some of our biggest mistakes then in dealing with all of this stress and things that come our way, not only when we're competing or what about after?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think one thing that I have noticed, to be true and something we see a lot in the field of burnout,
Yes.
the idea of these 2 different types of stressors. So we
Mm-hmm.
have the external stressors, the ones that are outside of us, that are,
Mm-hmm.
beyond our control, really. You
Mm-hmm.
talk about as an entrepreneur, you're like, "What's the market doing right now?" The
Yes.
technology that I have to handle. Whilst
Mm-hmm.
I'm in this entrepreneurial role and maybe I'm in a
Yes.
midlife transition, then maybe I'm
Mm-hmm.
also navigating, helping with my aging parents, and maybe I'm still raising teens or I have special needs child, so all this can be going on at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and those are all those external stressors, the global world and economy, all of it. And then separate to that, and I think this shows up a lot for athletes, or just in that post-competition or transitioning from one thing to the next thing, are what we call the internal stressors.
Mm.
So those are the conversations we're having in our head.
Mm.
And I see this show up a lot, with high performing professionals, this
Mm-hmm.
pressure to perform, the conversations where the things we're telling ourselves, the not good enough, I
Mm-hmm.
can't do this, or so and so is more qualified, or
Mm-hmm.
like the way that we can sometimes even beat ourselves up in our own head. And that's a lot of internal stress and internal pressure that can show up that can contribute to us driving ourselves harder than
Mm-hmm.
perhaps we need to, or not delegating or asking for help or managing
Mm-hmm.
things really well. So I see that a lot in my world with burnout.
It's such a great principle and so funny because I married an athlete. I had gone professional baseball player. I had gone to one baseball game my whole life, I think, so I was kind of clueless. But I came from the entertainment field and I
Yeah.
understand exactly what this is. I could be standing backstage ready to go on and thinking, oh, what am I thinking? Can I hit my first note? Am I going to, am I going to do, all of that, and that's so prevalent. It is very prevalent with models. It's very with some of the main. They face this sort of stage fright, and I didn't really face stage fright. I faced more a little bit of that feeling like, what am I doing here, type of thing. And so there's that that kind of works on you mentally. Some of those stressors. So that's a very relevant point as well.
Yeah, because we tend to think that conversation that's going on in our mind, like, there you are,
Yes.
that you are, this incredible musician, you can do this performance, and yet
Mhm.
still this conversation shows up for this moment,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And in that moment, it affects our biology. It affects what's going on internally, what's happening to our heart rate, our breath rate,
Mhm.
our blood
Yes.
pressure, right? So
Right.
all of those things are happening in an instant in response to these thoughts that sometimes just pop in. And you're like, oh,
Yes.
right. And I
Yes.
I get the sense you're someone that developed the skill set to be able to see it, hear it, notice it,
Yep.
and then move forward.
Exactly. Exactly. And those are skills that you
Yeah,
do have to develop and remind yourself of. And then you can help others through. That's why I can help others. So that's why
exactly.
I have been there. I have done that. Believe me. So you talk about, okay, we've already talked about the internal stressors, the external stressors, which was great, especially when facing, this fear that
Yeah.
I think that's really, really relevant of that fear factor. Oh my goodness, there is a fear factor up and any sort of performance. And I was just watching some speakers. I was at a national conference, a speakers conference, and one of the acts, he had his sons on with. They were doing all of the, some of the acrobatic, things that
Yes.
and but there's in one of them specifically, I wish I remember the name of it because it's a show I don't watch, but everybody was excited about it. Anyway, but he had, this whole thing up on the stage, and one of the young boys, about 12, 13, the first two he didn't land. So, but the third one he did. And you are teaching then your kids as well as yourself. It's okay in front of, you know, 900 people. It was okay, and we can cheer him on because we know what that feels like. So, but that's internal and external, what your mindset, you have to get beyond that to be able to do it again.
You really do, and like I said, I think about it, and something you asked me earlier on about, that fear, what was that underneath that fear that you had with the vaulting?
Hmm.
And at the time, I wouldn't have equated it per se to, say, a fear of failing,
Yes.
right? That
Yeah.
what was where it was
Mhm.
like I had this fear of hurting myself, but
Mhm.
really underneath it is, well, what if I fail? What if I can't do it? Right?
Yeah.
And I can only speak to my own experience, but I see this a ton in the burnout world because of
Mhm.
there tends to be some habits of perfectionism,
Oh, yeah.
right, that show up,
Yes.
right? And former athletes tend to have a lot of internal drive and
Mhm.
perfectionism, the need to get it right, to
Yes.
perform, and often are gonna say our external worth is validated by the trophies we win or the way the fans respond. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, and so
Mhm.
I don't know that I necessarily had a really what I would call healthy relationship with failure at first.
Yes.
Right? And I
Mhm.
think that might have contributed to some of my own burnout experience,
Mm.
when that first happened for me was because I don't know that I truly understood this difference between
Mhm.
failure as that first step in learning,
Mm.
right? Versus, like, failure is like the end of the world, right?
Yeah, you feel like it's the end of the world.
It feels
Yeah,
like it.
yeah.
Yeah, but then you realize, like, actually mistakes are healthy, and then you can
Yes.
change your relationship to
Mhm.
mistakes, failure, and get into that sort of messy I call it messy action, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you're not nearly as stuck or paralyzed in moving forward.
And I think there's such a balance in this. And I mean, we've raised kids and sons and, through athletics and all of that. There's such a balance in that and wanting them to excel and do well and also be okay with, you know, eh, y you don't want, like, not winning the game, not winning the contest to be affecting you for the rest of the day or for the rest of the week. You can go for such perfection, work to get there, do the work, and then, that relaxed confidence, it has to take over. The same thing as in performing. If I tensed up, for years of performing, if I tensed up, it will come out and not enjoy my audience. And so you want to enjoy that process. It's so hard to drill into very young athletes as well. But hopefully that can be the parents can guide, the trainers can guide a little bit on that and enjoying this process. So it's, this perfection thing. You want to study, you want to work hard, then you want to be able to let go just a little bit because the stress will just kill you.
It
Yeah.
really will,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It really will. Yeah.
There's that difference between, like, kind of the piece of healthy striving towards
Yes.
something, right?
Mhm.
Versus
Mhm.
that true pressure to perform and do it quote unquote perfectly.
Yes.
It just has such a, like, as you said, a different
Mhm.
experience in your entire body.
Yeah.
And then when you're interacting with a larger audience, they're going to pick up on that shift or change, and we'll call it energy inside of you that you're coming with.
Yeah.
And the same in business,
Mhm.
right? It's going to be
Yes.
that
Oh,
idea.
it crosses over and everything, doesn't it?
It does.
There's
It
a lot of
absolutely does.
yeah, if I can connect
Yeah.
almost anything there. So,
Yeah.
okay, so, you talk about unlocking your body's psychological stress cycle. Now those are some big words, but we're living in a world that's not always easy to navigate with, all of the things that are thrown at us. So talk about that a little bit, this psychological stress cycle. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think if, really listeners can really take away from this conversation, there's this difference between what those external stressors we talked about
Mhm,
and
right,
that those internal conversations we're having in our mind and what's happening like internally what we call that physiological stress cycle.
right.
And so one of the things that we really focus on, I call it triple R method inside of Burnt Out to Blissed Out.
Okay.
And that very first phase, the most important thing is what we say body first, business second.
Okay.
Because when we learn that what happens inside of our body in response to those stressors, it's separate.
Mm,
So for example, let's just say there's something in your life, in your business, in this global world we're living in, and it's feeling stressful to you.
mhm.
In the moment that that happens inside of you, you have this instant biological reaction, right?
Yes.
I
Mhm.
see this stressor, I feel stressed. And so these things happen. My heart rate does go up, my blood pressure does go up, my breath rate goes up, my digestion slows down, it becomes unimportant, my immunity decreases. And so this is happening in an instant in response to that stressor. And what we know is that we used to think, if we go back to kind of ancient times, right? Like sort
Mhm.
of prehistoric times, it was the lion, the tiger, the bear, or the hippo. They were the stressor in our
Mhm.
experience. And so, in response to that, we would either run away, we would fight back, or sometimes we would freeze, play dead because that's our best option in the moment, right? And we used to think it was getting back to our tribe. We shut the door, and then all of a sudden we're feeling safe in our environment. That's what allowed our body to kind of come back to balance.
Mhm.
But we recognize now that it was actually the fighting or the fleeing. It
Mhm.
was that muscular activity that actually brought our internal physiology back into balance.
Mm.
And so what's so important to understand is that when all those stressors are in our life right now, and there are many of them and they're compounded and stacked, right?
Mhm.
That we can actually go into this place of what we would call fighting or fleeing through movement and exercise and actually bring our biology back into balance, even if those things haven't changed.
Mhm.
And so when we go to this body first principle, it's like, okay, great. I'm recognizing that I've got this project going on. I'm traveling. I've watched the news today. Like,
Yes. I'm really stressed. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
that in of itself is enough,
I
right?
know. I know.
Right. So, but in those moments, remember your biology has responded immediately. But if
Yes.
you say to yourself, right, my body's in a stress cycle now in response to that stressor, but I can complete it.
Mhm.
Movement is the number one way you can
Mm.
complete that stress cycle.
Mm.
By just that muscular activity will bring the blood pressure down, the heart rate, the breath rate, all of it will come back to balance. The hormones will balance
Mhm.
themselves back out. If I tap into breathing and I get that long,
Mhm.
slow exhale, as long as it's not a epic stress, it is the
Mhm.
quickest thing that I can do in any given moment.
Yes.
And so we have about 9 ways we can complete that internal biological stress cycle and bring it and complete it and bring it back to balance, which is separate to everything outside of us, right?
Yeah. That
So
is a
when we go,
great
yeah,
point. Yes. Go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, when we go to that body first
Mhm.
mindset, body
Yeah.
first, business second mindset,
Mhm.
in any given moment, if we're feeling that in our body, we just have to say to ourselves, okay, what can I do for body first in 5 minutes, 10 minutes,
Mhm.
15 minutes?
Mhm.
And it's not exercise for the sake of exercise. I am
No.
doing this to complete the cycle.
That is such a great point because when you do that, just giving the mind, when you start focusing on that body first, you're giving the mind a break.
Yes.
So, and the breathing is so important. I find that is one of the best stress reliever. If you're facing nerves and you can take those deep breaths, and I talk about that in singing. I taught singing for a number of years, but that very deep belly breath. So I want you to lay on your back, let that belly expand. Those what little babies do, but that is that deep breath and just let it go. Exhale. You don't need to go through all these classes for that. You can do that yourself and putting yourself into that place. Lay on that floor, lay on the back, and to be able to have that. And that really, really does help. Get outside, get out with some nature, just and breathe the air. Hopefully you have
Mhm.
good air, but
Yes.
on a good day, we have a lot better air today than we did some years ago. But yeah, get outside and just really take that in. Give yourself a break from being behind a computer or a desk. A lot of us are just, we're glued to that. So to be careful with that, and it's a
Yeah.
huge thing in
Well,
being able
and
to.
especially that we go back to that life after competition, right? When we
Yes.
trained as an athlete,
Yes.
we often
Mhm.
have been modeled, and the culture of is to push through for the benefit of the team,
Of
for
course.
the performance,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
So it's a mindset that we adapted or like learned, and we actually almost need to unlearn it a little bit at this
Wow.
season of life to
Mhm.
be that. I like to think of self-care in essence as a little bit of a team
Mhm.
sport. It requires all of
Mhm.
us working with each other to help each other get the time we need.
Right.
But
Mhm.
we also need to know that if I take a rest, that's not bad for me. That's actually
Mm.
helping me perform better, right? But it might
Yes.
go a little bit against how I was taught, how I was coached, what was important at the time.
Mhm.
And so I think that we can learn to develop this rest as replenishment to keep going. We know as athletes, there's an in season, then there's a post season, an off
Yeah.
season, and a preseason.
Yes.
And we now, as business owners, as humans performing in this sort of second season of life, we need to go through those seasons in a day, a week, or a month, right? I need to give myself that 5 minutes of an off season in my day to take that breath, to complete
Yes.
my cycle, and I can go back into in season, get back on my computer and do the task.
Yes.
But we all know it's not hard to understand this as athletes, or if we think about athletes we know, if we kept them in season 365 days of a year,
Mhm.
we all know what's going to happen to that athlete.
Yeah.
That
Burnout.
they're gonna
Totally.
burn. They're
Yeah.
gonna burn.
Totally burn out.
They're
Totally
gonna
burn out.
totally burn out. They just can't
Yeah.
be competing all.
Mm.
They need all of those different seasons, and so
Yeah.
do we. But
Yeah.
somehow we think
Mhm.
we've forgotten that. We tend to think
Yes, we've forgotten that. We
we've
keep
forgotten
thinking
that.
we can just, get through all of this. Yeah,
All
yeah.
day, push all day long,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Right, right. That's a great, great point. You also make the point of We talked about some of these with the myths of
Yeah.
just keeping going, but also that this is so prevalent in women. It's prevalent in men as well. Believe me, I know that because of having sons. But why is burnout? Why is it so prevalent in women? Or do women face something and physiologically all of that? What is your opinion of that as a former athlete?
Yeah, so I'd say a few things contribute, and it depends on the season of life that you are in also. So
Yes.
I see this a lot. I see an uptick in midlife women.
Mhm.
So there's a
Right.
couple different things going on.
Hmm.
As they're moving into our perimenopausal, menopausal years,
Right.
we actually have physiological changes
Hmm.
our biology and our hormones. So
Hmm.
our adrenal glands that are responsible for mitigating stress inside of our body and mitigating
Hmm.
our cortisol,
Right.
our adrenaline, they they take over for the production of estradiol after the ovaries it starts to decline in the ovaries.
Hmm.
So the gland that is needing to take over, that has been mitigating our stress through most of our life, now has an
Hmm.
extra job. And
Yes.
so that in of itself lends to this extra layer of what I call physiological exhaustion and burnout for
Hmm.
that reason.
Hmm.
I think a lot of the women carry what we call that emotional load or emotional labor
Hmm.
inside of a lot of family systems, inside of many
Right.
relationships, not all, but there is
Hmm.
this extra burden of emotional care that goes
Hmm.
on that is unseen. And so,
Yes.
right? It's unseen.
Yeah.
And maybe in your 20s and 30s, you're managing that really well, but by your 40s and 50s and
Yeah.
beyond, it's catching up a little bit more, right?
Yes. Yes.
So,
Exactly.
right, compounded with this like
Mhm.
decline in estradiol and the adrenal glands
Yeah.
taking over for the ovary. So there's
Yeah.
just this compounding effects,
Yeah.
and then this sandwich generation of being between maybe having raised kids and then now
Right.
taking care of parents. There's just a lot of layers there.
Yes.
So I see it show up in this season. Sometimes there are some career changes that are happening, right? And so
Hmm.
that
Right.
transition, but do I have the energy for it? I have to
Right.
learn these new skills.
Hmm.
So there's just lots of layers there, I think, that contribute to it showing up in women in this particular way.
Totally. I think especially the physical things that we go through. We're the ones that have babies. Yes,
Yeah,
women are the ones that have babies. And with all of the changes and the, things that we go through, and also just we're caregivers a lot of times. We end up being caregivers for our kids. Men do that too. So there's some stress things. We'll talk about that. But women, a lot of times, I wanted to be around enough to raise our kids. And my husband was a big part of that. But he did more of the outside work and I did more of the inside. I was able to reformat my business. I did a lot of private instruction at that point and then club work late at night and then music directing, all that sort of stuff. So it was different, but I was able to be around the kids a little bit more when, they were coming and going. And then, of course, then there's when you've got parents, and usually it's a lot of times the daughters are there taking
mm,
care and making sure everything's going. And Greg did a lot for his parents, wondering because there were two sons, and so I appreciated seeing that example. Hopefully, our sons saw that example. So, but
exactly.
yeah, but what are some of the things that men face with some of these stressors in their life?
Yeah, so yeah, that's interesting because when I originally started out in this field, I thought that predominantly I would be working with women, and
Yes.
while I do to a large part,
Mhm.
I attracted this sort of subset of men in trades that surprised me a
Mhm.
lot,
Oh, interesting.
right? And so I was
Mhm.
like, "Hmm," and I noticed a lot of the same mindsets, to be honest, and the same things, same sort of mindsets and behaviors that were getting them into trouble with this
Mhm.
burnout piece, and that was one often there's a lot of, boundaries. Boundaries were not
Mhm.
they didn't have awesome boundaries with their time. They wanted to please everybody.
Yeah.
They wanted to please everybody. They really truly did. They wanted to be, seen as valuable and capable, and so they were not
Strong.
strong, they're not
Yeah.
delegating well, they're not letting go of certain tasks, they're not working in
Mhm.
their zone of genius, they're doing like, wearing multi different like, all the different
Right.
hats, um,
Right.
But it's so funny enough, it's like boundaries always comes up, that like ability to ask for help, delegate.
Mhm.
We call it ask for help early, often, and kindly inside of the Burnt Out to Bliss Out formula. It's
Yeah.
a skill that they had to develop in that same way. And so those were, and again, that same pressure to perform. They were putting
Mhm.
the pressure to perform on themselves as the leaders of company of like anywhere from like 2 to 20 employees,
Mhm.
but that need to constantly be in that place of strength
Right.
in leadership and not having that sense of vulnerability.
Mhm.
But when they have a safe space to lean into that and unpack
Mhm.
it a little bit, then I think it's easier to go back out into the world and lead the team, but also to pass things off or to bring the team on board
Right.
in a collaborative way versus I have to have
Mhm.
it all together all the time.
Yes.
It's all on
Yes.
me, right? That's
Yes.
tough.
Yeah. That's a real mental mindset
Yeah.
of being able to get beyond having to
Yes.
always be in control. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of that's a interesting
Yeah.
aspect. And I think, now there's a lot of shared responsibilities, so-called shared responsibilities, and it doesn't always end up being that way, but trying to be able to do some of that. So that's really good to say because you can admit that you're having struggles with that and having struggles with creating some of those boundaries and how much you can actually do and all of that. So that's important. Yeah, definitely.
It's so important, and it's a mindset
Mm,
shift
yeah,
that happens over time. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So, and that went right into that little question of like the same thing with uh, former athletes. I mean, it's business, it's athletics, it's a lot of different areas in being able to, we're pushing ourselves or we're pushing, how can we compete? How can we get better? How can we, but it's the same sort of principle. It's a different rush though. When you win a game,
Yes,
when you hit a home run, when you
yes.
do there's a different rush that happens there. And when you hit that high note and you got that sailing there and there's a different rush there than when you're sitting behind the computer and go, oh yeah, I got that done. There's a little bit different feeling there. Yeah.
Okay, and this is so important that you're bringing this up. Like, so important because, as someone now that works in this world and in this online space, it's a
Yes.
very different, and
Yes.
I actually realized that I had to bring that back into my world, and so
Ah,
I know I've heard on some of your podcasts you love
mhm.
pickleball. I am a tennis
Yes.
player, right?
I'm playing tonight as we record this. Yeah.
See, and you know where you can find those outlets for that rush of winning in this
Right.
different way, right?
Right.
So I've loved, both tennis and skiing right now because I was a snowboarder, I switched to skiing,
Mhm.
now I'm into tennis, and so it is that beauty of, like, learning and
Mhm.
excelling. In some games, I can go in with the mindset of, like, "I don't care if I win or lose today. If
Right.
I executed my serve better, I won."
Yes,
Right?
exactly. I
Yeah.
think that's such a good mindset, and I'm playing with a great group tonight. They're all positive. But I
Yes.
said I did I did my, like 5 mile walk with some of these gals this morning, and so as we're recording this, and I just said, "Well, I need to work a little bit more on my serve because last time I was like losing my serve, and I have a good serve." And they said, "Oh no, this is just fun. We're gonna be." And I said, "No, no, no, no. I need to. I don't want." There's that little competitive part of me that goes, "Oh no, I want to make sure I can do that." And all it takes is a couple times sometimes, but yeah, there's that part of us. Let's just do a few reps before we do that. And that's fine. Then you can leave it as long as you do the few reps and you feel good about that. And then you can go on.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You can take those skills you have learned as an
Yes.
athlete, as a high performing musician, you can
Yeah.
bring them into this season,
Yes.
and you also get to decide, what do I value now? Do I really
Right.
value
Right.
winning? I
Hmm.
more value, like, I'm better than I was last time, and that's fun
Yeah.
and it's peaceful.
Uh-huh.
I've actually had to learn to let go of being
Hmm.
competitive because it's not enjoyable,
Oh, yeah.
right?
For everybody else, probably either. So, but no, but
Right?
actually,
Yeah.
And my focus is making sure everyone else has a good time. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
exactly what I want because we have a court. So I want to make sure when you are on my court, you have, we were
Oh,
fortunate because just we have the space, but I didn't want,
so
didn't want
awesome.
the upkeep. So that's why we have a court. That's why I wanted that cement. But but that's the whole, my focus. But I do want a good serve though, too, because I know I have a good
Exactly.
serve.
And there's joy but there's joy in that
Mhm.
place of getting better at that
Yes.
versus
Yeah.
this, like, stress in it.
That you have
It's
to win. Yeah,
joyful.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a great point. That's funny. That,
Yeah.
I'm talking with an athlete. I am so not an athlete, but I was just excited that I had a good serve. Okay, so we're gonna talk, yeah. So let's kinda, tie some of this up when you're navigating this show is all about as the new title for this show is Power of After. It's been Women at Halftime. And I felt like the message now has grown, actually, and my audience has grown. It's men and women. And your next chapter can be your most purposeful yet. Maximize those skills, those resources, your experience. You have so much. Don't discount those. Just figure out what you want to do. You don't have to work full time. You can give to an organization. You can start whatever you want to do. But when you're facing that life change, that's it big. All of a sudden, people going from having a box and they have this routine and they have this set schedule. And now all of a sudden, there's no box. You're creating your own box. That is a big life change. That is a big mindset shift. And that can bring a lot of stress. So, how can we use this positive reappraisal of all of our details to keep ourselves moving forward with kind of an athletic mindset, a competitive mindset from even some of your experience and how you felt when your body wasn't doing everything it used to do. Okay, so that's a big deal. But also, when your day is not structured like it used to be, I mean, there's a lot of changes how you deal. How can we restructure some of that so we feel like we still have, something going? We're not just getting old. Okay, so we all are getting old. I'm getting old. So, but we have, um, there's purpose and we have plenty to give still. So, can it give us some of that mindset from your end? You're younger than me, so yeah.
Well, I'll say yes, and, like, definitely coming in, so I'll be well, my the next month will be 49, so I'm coming into
Good.
50, right?
To
So
great years. Yes.
8
Yeah.
years, and it's
Hmm.
the first time, to be able to recognize that, "Oh, there's just something different
Yes.
about this age." I don't know what it
Yes.
is, but I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'm aware that I don't have um, perhaps the same resilience, energy, or whatever, and at the
Mm.
same time, remember, I have so what I didn't share with listeners is I also had a really long, successful career as an athletic therapist before transitioning into, burnout recovery, and
Mhm.
so one thing I will say is that you can you really, really, really can. You don't have to get into the mindset of, "I'm just getting old, this just how it is."
Right, right, yeah.
It is not true. I have
That's not true. I
It's not
know.
true,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I've seen
I
over and
just
over.
joke about it because I am, but no, no, you can. That's why I wrote my last book, Power of Act.
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. So I'm gonna just echo you, like, loud, like, from the mountaintops. Yes, you
Yes.
can. You can
Mhm.
actually I feel better in my body now than I did when I was 20 because I was plagued with injuries
Uh,
as a gymnast,
I bet.
and then that carried over for a long time until I really learned how to work with my body. So now
Yeah.
at 50 or close to
Mhm,
50, I'm the
mhm.
most functional I've ever felt ever, and there's nothing that
Wonderful.
right? If we learn how to do what to do to take care of ourselves, there's a lot of
Mm,
power that we actually do have.
yeah.
And so I would say the one thing when, you asked about that transition and bringing all of you to this next season, but also not having the same structure, the box that you had before.
Mhm. Right.
The one thing to remember, and I'll bring it from the body perspective, is that in the body world, we say structure governs function.
Mhm.
So in anatomy and physiology, structure governs function. And I also like to share with my clients, structure governs freedom.
Mm,
It seems counterintuitive, like, I've got all this time and all this space, but
right.
that can actually feel really overwhelming,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Yes.
when we actually bring some structure
Mhm.
into this next season,
Mhm.
whatever it is that we're choosing to focus on, whether it's giving back through a nonprofit, whether we are going to a second type of career, we can bring all of the skills. I call it your career capital. That's
Mhm.
really what you're bringing to this next phase, right? All this career
Yes.
capital from the time you were
Mm.
selling lemonade as an 8-year-old to
Right, right,
your leadership role you had in corporate, whatever that looked like, right?
right.
But now you have more freedom, but if you don't put some structure inside of that
Mhm.
and create some of those sort of value-based
Mhm.
goals,
Yes.
then you are going to feel overwhelmed. You
Yes.
really will. And so we resist that structure because we've left it, and so we wanna almost go it's like teenagers, we wanna go the other way, right? We're like, "I don't
Yeah.
want any more structure," but
Yeah.
ultimately, the secret is you actually wanna build some in and maybe just start with
Mhm.
body first. What am I gonna do
Right.
for my body first time?
Mhm.
And I'm gonna plug
Mhm.
that into an actual calendar,
Yeah.
and then from there, I'm like, "Okay, how much time do am I willing to give to this project, this goal, whatever that thing is?" I'm
Mhm.
gonna plug that in, but in fact, before I do that, is it
Mm.
really important to me that I'm always having time to spend with my grandkids? Is it important to
Yes.
me that I am, like, I'm valuing there needs to be some give back in what I'm choosing? Whatever it is, let's build that in first. Now let's put the box of structure of the work in, but do it in a focused and joyful way.
That's wonderful because again, we go back to and happens a lot in retirement. People
Yes.
can't wait to retire.
Yes.
Oh, I'm finally, oh, okay. So 3 days after, it's like, oh, I'm bored. What am I gonna do? What am
Totally.
I gonna yeah, oh, what where am I going to so that's why I always say start early.
Yeah.
Start building those even a side business, even a side something else that you do on the side. And because you can alleviate some of that stress because it feels different.
It does.
'Cause, and even though you're looking forward to it and you're looking, "Oh, I'm gonna finally do all these projects." I tell you what, those go really fast. So you want to build that sort of structure and hopefully keep a little bit of the structure that will cross over to those times of change. So,
And
yeah,
that sense of identity, I don't think
right.
we realize how much it gets wrapped up in one way of being or doing.
Exactly.
So just
Exactly.
like you said, when you start building that in early,
Yes.
it won't
Uh-huh.
feel like such an epic loss, and you
Yes.
start to build that community and those structures that we need to feel
Right.
that sense of belonging.
Right.
That's where the joy comes from,
Exactly.
ultimately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What a fun conversation. This has been so great. So, what boy, we've had a lot of nuggets today. What's one thing you want people to leave with? Just one brief thing, and then I want you to give how people can contact you. There will be an article with this, by the way. Make sure you're getting our updates, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. You will get this article, but there you can also get the link in the show notes. But what's one thing you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna come back to that body first principle, right?
That's a great one.
It is a
Yes.
great one, and I just think to myself that, of all the things that I wanna have in this next season of life, I have, like, I want my mobility, I
Yes.
want right, like, that's wealth to
Yes.
me at this
Yes.
stage.
That is so correct.
Yes.
And it's hard to keep it up, by the way. But
Right,
it
right?
is that's a very good reminder. Wow, I love that. I
Yeah,
love that.
so
It's good
focus
for the
there
mind. It's good
first.
for everyone. Yes, yes. And how can people contact you?
Yes, so the 2 of the best ways to find me, so you can
Mhm,
find me through the website,
mhm.
christynichol.com. It's a
Yes.
great way to connect.
Mhm.
On socials, you'll find me on LinkedIn and Instagram at Christy Nichol Coach. So those are the places I show up the most and where we can interact, message me anytime. I have just loved it. If you have a takeaway or a gold nugget from today that stood out to you, like, let me know. I love responding and just connecting.
How fun. Well, this has been fabulous. It's been fun. And that's one area that I'm I'm starting to focus more on, especially because of the number of athletes in my family, and former athletes, and soon to be former. So, but I think it's an important mindset. And I come from that competitive background. So I understand competing. So I think the subject was very, very important, but also with that body, and that's why I'm booking active vacations for my husband, by the way. Got to keep both of us in shape. And I'm exhausted. So anyway, but it's good.
It's so
It's,
good.
it's so
It's so
good. It
good.
is so good. And it's fun. And while we can, at least. So
Yes.
thank you so much. And thank you everyone for staying with us. What a joy and what a thrill. And make sure you're getting every single episode, Power of After Show, and that we have new episodes, new shows coming out every single week. And if you sign up for our newsletter, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter, and I give away a lot of things. And there's always music too. Of course, I have a big music background. So you want to make sure you get some of those videos. Are always fun. So thanks again, Christy. And this was delightful. I appreciate you're up in Canada. And here we were able to coordinate. I love this, interviewing people really from all over the world. So thanks so much. And thank you all for joining in. And I will look forward to being with all of you again next time. So bye-bye for now. Bye. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. I love bringing you insights to help you maximize your skills, resources, and experience at mid-career and beyond, so that you can make your next chapter your most impactful and purposeful yet.